Okay, looks like our queue is now full. Please begin.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Chase, President of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Thank you for joining us today. I have some quick housekeeping remarks before we start. Please keep yourself muted. The event is being recorded and is on the record. The recording will be made available on our website, saferoads.org. We will only be taking questions from members of the press today. If you're a member of the press and have a question for our speakers, please send a direct message using the Q&A button and identify yourself and media outlet. We will hold all questions until the conclusion of the prepared remarks. For those of you unfamiliar with Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety, we're an alliance of consumer, public health, safety, law enforcement, and medical groups and insurance companies and agents. Our mission is to advance federal and state laws and policies to promote safe drivers and road users, safe roadways, and safe vehicles. We are holding today's event because the infrastructure legislation that is garnering so much attention in the media and across the country is about more than just fixing damaged roads and bridges. It's also about fixing the unacceptable death and injury toll on our roads, helping to prevent families from experiencing the trauma of losing a loved one in a crash or suffering a debilitating injury, and addressing inequities by requiring available and affordable safety technologies on every new vehicle to protect every person traveling in a car or truck, riding a bicycle, and walking or rolling. If proven safety technologies are not advanced in the bill passed by Congress, over 183,000 people will be killed and nearly 14 million more injured in motor vehicle crashes at a comprehensive cost of more than $5 trillion over the 5-year time period of the legislation. Every major surface transportation reauthorization bill in the last few decades has included significant vehicle safety upgrades. Now must not be any different. We have a terrific lineup of speakers who will address the safety issues in greater detail and underscore the urgency to seize this moment. President Biden, much like the families joining us today, knows firsthand the enormous loss and grief caused by traffic crashes. The bill sent to the president must be worthy of his signature and of the heroic families who advocate for change in memory of their loved ones. Thank you. Has Chairman DeFazio joined us, or shall I introduce Chairwoman Schakowsky?
Kathy, we do not have Chairman DeFazio
Very
at this
good.
time.
I'd like to introduce Chairwoman Jan Schakowsky. As chair of the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky's efforts led the inclusion of many critical auto safety provisions, including crash avoidance technologies, as part of the Invest in America Act. Chairwoman Schakowsky is a true champion for safety and crash victim advocates, and we're so grateful that she has joined us. Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for your leadership for the Advocates for Highway Safety. I also want to give a big shout out, and I look forward to hearing from him, for Chairman Peter DeFazio for including in the Invest in America Act these highway safety bills. This is a huge step forward for us. And I especially want to thank the families, people who have come time after time, year after year, and told a tragic story about what happened to them and their families. And you'll hear from them, and it is I'm especially grateful to them. I do want to talk about the 7 bills just very, very briefly that are in the package that will be in the Invest in America Act, because the House of Representatives has passed this bill, and now we look forward to the Senate also passing the legislation, because we are not talking just about the nation's roads and bridges and water infrastructure, but also investing in auto safety. So number one, we are going to be adding legislation to prevent the death in hot cars, where children, unfortunately, nearly 1,000 babies and toddlers since 1990 have actually died in hot cars. And I want to thank Tim Ryan, Congressman Tim Ryan, for his support for that legislation, his leadership. We are going to be countering human error and preventing drunk driving, potentially saving 20,000 lives a year. And I want to thank Debbie Dingle for her leadership. Strengthening seatbelts to prevent the collapse of seats during crashes. Catherine Rice has sponsored that bill, but it will save the lives of children who are riding in the back seat. We have legislation now that will reduce the impact between passenger vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles and wheelchairs and other vulnerable road users. Bobby Rush from Illinois is the sponsor of that. We want to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning and the unintended rollaways of keyless ignition vehicles that are happening now, and Darren Soto and Seth Moulton sponsored that legislation. We want to improve the safety of limousines. I don't know if families going to be here today, but 18 people died in a limousine crash. We can do better. This legislation will do that. And finally, enhancing the safety of booster seats and other children restraint systems to make sure that no more children are injured or actually killed because of that. So Raja Krishnamurthy is the sponsor of that. So our subcommittee and the Congress now, under the leadership of Chairman DeFazio, have taken these steps along with our advocates and along with the families. I just want to thank you so much for being able to participate today. It's a transformational package of legislation, and we're all very proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. We really appreciate you joining us today. And of course, for your safety leadership. I'd now like to introduce Chairman of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, Representative Peter DeFazio. Under the chairman's leadership, the House advanced numerous safety improvements, which will save tens of thousands of lives in the Invest in America Act, HR 3684, which was passed on a bipartisan vote on July 1st. Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate your holding this to focus on what's in the Invest Act. And of course, I just joined in because I was waiting to speak to the caucus, didn't get an opportunity, the extraordinary deficiencies of the Senate bill, which is essentially status quo on safety and status quo on highway building, and will not deal with fossil fuel pollution and carbon reduction. We're being told, in fact, Steny Hoyer basically said, we're going to take it. I'm not taking it. We cannot miss this opportunity to deal with safety issues in a meaningful way. I mean, we haven't made any, well, we're losing ground. I mean, fatalities in active transportation are up, 50% in the last decade. We need, if we want to get people out of single occupancy vehicles, if we want them to lead healthier lives, if we want kids to have safe rides to school, safe routes to school, we have to make major investments in safe streets instead of designing things the way we have since Dwight David Eisenhower, which is for the maximum input and the maximum speed, maximum throughput of automobiles and trucks. And then, of course, as you know, on the area of trucking, there are great new safety devices, automatic braking, side indicators to warn them that someone is in their blind spot as they're moving the truck over. Underride protections, which are totally inadequate. So our bill deals with underrides, automatic emergency braking, and would go for the largest trucks, and then require DOT to study the next category of trucks to see if they're desirable. We address school bus safety. You know, we've been having an argument about school buses since I've been on the committee. And you know, the way they design them, I mean, if the bus flips over on its side, you know, the kids are not restrained and they're all flying around in there. You have fatalities, you have broken necks, paralysis, you have horrible incidents. And you know, the bus lobbies, oh, it'll be too expensive to have you know, shoulder harnesses, restraints, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. Well, New Jersey mandated it, and you know, that's you know, it's practical. It can be done, and we can design new buses that are much safer. None of those provisions are in the Senate bill. So I really, really appreciate the advocates for supporting, you know, what we did in the, you know, I forgot one other thing. They want to enable 18-year-olds to drive 18-wheelers interstate commerce. You know, you know, I was talking to a colleague, I can't remember who it was, and she said, I have an 18-year-old. No way should he be driving a semi on the interstate system. But the Senate bill allows that. So, you know, I appreciate your advocacy. We've got to push hard. We can't be made to accept these omissions, these deficiencies in the Senate bill and lock in another 5 years. And, you know, a lot more people got involved in active transportation during the pandemic. So it's very likely, and we had fewer vehicle miles traveled last year, yet fatalities were up. There's a real problem here, and we have to confront it. And a lot of states don't want to confront it, and my bill will make them confront it, deal with it, and they can't have plans. Some states actually have plans that project more fatalities, and that's acceptable under current law. That's not acceptable. You know, there's a lot of cities going to Vision Zero. People say it's impossible. Well, I remember when we had a Secretary of Transportation back when we were losing a lot of planes in the early 90s, said we're going to get to the point of not having crashes, and people are, oh, that'll never happen. And until we were doing pretty well until the MAX tragedies, which were preventable, and all had to do with Boeing being pressured by Wall Street to rush the plane out. So thank you, and let's be strong and let's push hard. Push the White House, push the Senate, push my leadership in the House on these issues.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. You can bet we will be supporting your bill and fighting all along the way. So we really appreciate your and Congresswoman Schakowsky's leadership on these safety issues. Thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce Joan Claybrook, a founding board member of Advocates. Joan has been a leading voice in the fight for safer vehicles for decades. Thank you so much for joining us, Joan. Joan, please unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you, Mr. DeFazio and Chairwoman Schakowsky. We really, really appreciate the hard work that you've done, and you are exemplary safety champions, and the families also who are here. We so appreciate your attendance. We are at a critical time in our nation's history on transportation safety. Motor vehicle crash deaths are up. They're on the rise, exceeding 38,000 people being killed last year and many, many thousands more injuries. Yet terrific dynamic technologies like automatic emergency braking, known as AEB, would save thousands of lives. And they're available and in the market on some vehicles right now. So we know that they work and that they're available. The problem is that the federal safety standards don't require them in new cars and trucks. And without such a requirement, three things occur. There's no assurance the systems will perform effectively. Some systems may, and some systems may be substandard or even dangerous. Motor vehicle companies can upcharge for these systems, making them unaffordable to families and smaller companies. And some companies won't put the systems in their vehicles at all. In this infrastructure bill, there's a giant loophole, however. Special interests, trucking interests, lobbied to carve out for small and medium-sized trucks from the AEB requirement in the House and Senate bills for cars and large trucks, despite the fact that 27% of all fatalities in large trucks involve these vehicles, and they've been on the rise every year from 2016 to 2019. This means trucks are delivering package and goods in our neighborhood where children are playing and people are walking, rolling in wheelchairs or biking, and they don't have AEB. It's a recipe for disaster, and it can be immediately fixed in this legislation. AEB is the most effective and significant safety technology in decades. It's like the airbags of the 1980s. This system works automatically. It stops or slows vehicles that are about to have a crash and avoids them. It's also a big solution for the long-standing and challenging problems of drunk driving, drug driving, drowsy driving, and distracted driving. All of them are very difficult to control, and automatic emergency brakes are going to help terrifically with that. With the price tag of only $290 for medium-sized trucks, Congress can and must include this cost-effective improvement in the infrastructure bill. We are calling on our House and Senate champions to make this happen in this legislation, because without this requirement, hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries will occur every single year. Legislative requirements are how airbags and electronic stability control, which prevents rollovers, became standard equipment in the 90s and the 2000s. The result is that tens of thousands of lives have been saved, an amazing result. It is time for the next generation of safety technology to be required as standard equipment on all vehicles. The U.S. Department of Transportation places the value of a life at $11.6 million. Comparatively, the cost of requiring proven technologies in new vehicles is tiny. Like automatic brakes, the cost for passive impaired driving prevention technology is estimated to be in the range of a few $100s, and it could save 9,400 lives each year. The expensive technology to detect and alert when children are knowingly or unintentionally left alone in the vehicle or access it on their own is negligible, and it is negligent in this technology that is not yet standard in all new cars. And the bill that we're concerned with today will make them standard. And we must end the heartbreaking hot cars deaths of so many children. The majority of crashes with pedestrians and bicyclists occur at night in outside crosswalks, yet the headlight standard hasn't been upgraded since 1997. And we're still waiting for the rulemaking for adapted headlamps. Improved headlamps that would result in better visibility and less glare, and they have an insignificant price tag. Upgrading the seatback standard would cost as little as $1, yet it hasn't been done in over 50 years, while preventative seatback failure tragedies continue to occur, with parents in the front seat falling backward in a rear-end crash and killing their own children. A terrible tragedy. The problems with keyless ignition causing carbon monoxide poisoning and vehicle rollaways could be fixed for pennies. Additionally, anti-truck safety provisions in the current Senate bill that permit teen truck drivers to operate big rigs in interstate commerce exempt drivers hauling livestock from complying with hours of service limits or allow bigger and heavier trucks to operate on roads. These must be stricken. The costs of safety fixes are low, tiny, but the stakes not to require them are very, very high. We urge Congress to do its job and pass a bill that protects all road users and ends the needless suffering caused by preventable crashes. None of this is rocket science, and it won't break the bank. It is time to act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. I'd now like to introduce Amy Cohen. Amy is the co-founder of Families for Safe Streets, which started in New York City and now has chapters across the country, and works to turn the grief of families who lost loved ones in traffic crashes into advocacy. A strong voice for vulnerable road users, Amy's path to advocacy followed her own tragic loss. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. 2,842 days, nearly 41 million minutes. That's how long it's been since I last kissed my kind, adorable 12-year-old son goodbye, and then never saw him alive again. He was in 8th grade. He just needed to walk from school to soccer practice. You know, that should not have to be a deadly act. It is really incomprehensible to describe what it's like to bury your child and then have to figure out how to live without him. I spend a lot of time remembering, so many memories. He was, Sammy was so boisterous and verbally outspoken, but he didn't start out that way. When he was little, his big sister always knew exactly what he wanted, so much so that he hardly said more than a few words until he was 3 years old. And then one day we were visiting the Bronx Zoo for the holiday light show, and he stood in wonder at the elephant cage while the zookeepers fed them and Sammy said, "The elephant ate the whole apple." That's what came out. That sentence was really Sammy's first word. And since then, he didn't stop asking questions and marveling at life's many wonders. And he was determined. Only a few weeks before his death, he rode 100 miles in a century ride. You know, my husband called it the 75-mile marker. He sent me a photo. Sammy was sprawled out on the ground. And my husband said they'd be home soon because Sammy was too tired to continue. But not Sammy. He forced himself to get up. He mustered the strength to continue, and he was the youngest one to complete the entire 100-mile ride. You know, I believed and hoped with all my heart that he would draw on that strength to pull through when they were operating on him after the crash, but he was just too small to withstand having his chest run over by a multi-ton commercial van. His curiosity and passion would have done so much to fix the problems we face, but since he's not here, I fight for him. I joined with others and co-founded Families for Safe Streets. Every one of us in FSS has lost a family member or suffered a life-altering injury, and we confront the complacency and fight for safe streets so that others do not suffer. In his memory, I urge Congress to prioritize safety. I mean, how is it possible that the vast majority of nations like ours have dramatically reduced the number of people killed on their roadways and are so much safer than ours? You know, we rank at the bottom of the pile of high income nations in terms of traffic safety. We're 41st out of 49 nations, with only 8 countries, high income nations, having fewer capital deaths per capita. It is imperative that vehicles be designed to protect children like mine just trying to get around on our streets. All vehicles should have automatic emergency braking with an ability to detect those walking and biking who are most vulnerable. Large class 3 to 6 trucks, you know, similar to the van that killed my son, are frequently used to navigate city streets and neighborhoods. And there are only more of them on our roadways as online shopping has skyrocketed during the pandemic. You know, moreover, we need to start by making a national commitment to reducing traffic deaths on our roadways to 0. I just want to personally thank Congresswoman Schakowsky for her soon to be released resolution, making a commitment to 0 traffic deaths. Only by making that commitment will safety be prioritized to prevent these ridiculous changes, like carving out trucks or letting youngsters who are 18 years old drive 18-wheelers, or eliminating the hour restrictions that make sure truck drivers aren't sleepy when operating big rigs. With a 0 traffic deaths commitment, these ridiculous policy proposals would never even have been considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I'd now like to introduce Pete Sullivan. Pete is an expert with nearly 40 years of experience in technical, academic, operational, and managerial experience in private and commercial transportation. Welcome, Pete.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, and thank you to the Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety for having me on to visit with you all a little bit about the current state of affairs with regard to implementation of truck technology on medium-duty trucks, and kind of how we got here, where it can go, and where it needs to go. I'd like to begin by just underscoring the seriousness and the category of the type of crash that automatic emergency braking attempts to mitigate. The closing speed of a pedestrian, animal, or another vehicle in particular in front of a vehicle, which is called the lead vehicle following situation in human factors speak, is the most catastrophic and most dangerous type of a crash. It's also the type of crash that humans are least capable of determining. And so this type of mitigation technology, advanced automatic emergency braking and all of the advanced driver assist system technologies are really effective and have proven to be very effective in mitigating these types of crashes. Some of the challenges that the manufacturers have set forth in terms of implementing them in the medium duty sector is the vocational aspects, which is true of the medium duty sector as it relates to the light duty passenger cars and trucks, and then the heavy duty vehicles. The medium duty vehicles are much more built out for a specific purpose, like a snowplow, a bucket boom or crane that you see working on the power lines in the neighborhoods and things like that. But that doesn't really stop the technology from being able to be implemented. There are ways to get around these things. There are manufacturers that have currently implemented AEB in their medium duty lines, such as Ram chassis cabs, which is what most people remember as Dodge trucks or Ram trucks in their medium duty sector. Hino, Navistar, Peterbilt, and Kenworth have all to be commended for implementing various versions of advanced driver assist systems, including AEB, into their products. And some of them are standard equipment, not even optional. And so the current state of affairs is a movement towards that direction, but there's really a big hole and a very strong lag with getting these technologies implemented in the medium duty sector trucks. But let's look at technology for just a second. The way that the technology is advanced in vehicles was actually driven by the 1990 Clean Air Act that mandated exhaust emissions be reduced significantly. To achieve those goals, the manufacturers had to implement what's called controller area networks on the vehicles, where you have distributed modules managing different aspects of exhaust emissions and evaporative emissions. That's the backbone, the same backbone that is used for all these advanced driver assist systems as well. So the backbone's already there. The fundamental technology exists on the vehicles. Artificial intelligence is also, slowly making its way in various stages. But the natural progression is there. The technology is there. And I think it's clear from everybody that's participating here, and I'm sure to many others, that the medium duty sector is significantly lagging behind with regard to implementing these technologies. Other manufacturers, I've stated, have been able to do it. And I'm sure that there's innovative technologies and ways that other manufacturers and these ones that have already adopted it can alter the product and advance the product to include AEB. Thank you all for allowing me to visit with y'all today.
Pete, thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce Angela Jones of Gilbert, Arizona. She's a heroic family advocate with kids and car safety, whose inconceivable loss brought her to lobby for the Hot Cars Act. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Kathy. September 3rd, 2019 was the day our whole world came crashing down. It was the day our precious little girl went to heaven. Charlie was just a couple months shy of turning 4. She was our little ray of sunshine, who brought so much joy into our lives. She was always smiling and giggling, and she adored her 2 older sisters. I know she made a huge impact on so many people in her short 3 years and 10 months on this earth. Almost 2 years later, it is still so surreal that she is gone. September 3rd was a day where we were out of our normal routine. We were leaving on vacation the following day and had decided to keep Charlie home from preschool. She was going to stay with my husband since he worked from home. That morning I had left for work, and my husband dropped our 2 older girls off at their elementary school, and he brought Charlie back home. When he pulled into our driveway, he got out of the truck and went inside the house to start his normal workday. In his mind, he thought he dropped them all off at school, like he normally did. He didn't realize she was in the truck until I called on my lunch break to check to see how she was doing. I immediately heard the panic in his voice when he realized she was supposed to be home with him. He ran out to the driveway, opened the door to the truck, and found our precious little girl still strapped into her car seat, unresponsive. She had succumbed to the heat. This next few hours were the worst moments of our lives. My husband and I had to leave the hospital without our little girl. We cannot put into words what that felt like. It was indescribable, like I was living in a nightmare. I just kept screaming out, "How is this happening? We had to go tell our 9 and 5-year-old daughters that their little sister was in an accident and she wasn't coming home. She was now an angel in heaven. The sounds of their cries were absolutely soul-crushing. I'm sharing my story with you today in hopes that it will make a difference and will help prevent another family from experiencing this unthinkable heartbreak. I am sure a lot of people here today have heard all of the statistics and the numbers of how many children have died in hot cars over the decades, and you have heard countless stories of devastation. Most people think this could never happen to them, and I used to be one of those people. I have felt so many emotions since we lost Charlie. I have felt sad, empty, anger, disbelief, guilt, and pain. I am angry because if GM would have followed through with their promise back in 2001 to add detection to vehicles starting in 2004, my little girl would still be alive today. We owned a 2015 GMC Sierra and it had no such technology. A voluntary agreement by the auto industry is not enough. 17 years later, it still hasn't happened, and they're installing less effective technology that won't address a major percentage of hot car deaths. It is simply not enough. It breaks our hearts to know that there is affordable and available technology out there that could have detected our little girl in my husband's vehicle and saved her life by sounding an alarm and sending an alert to his phone. My husband was only 20 feet away from her the entire time. She was trapped inside of his vehicle. Had he known, he would have done literally anything to protect her. The Hot Cars Act, which is part of the House Invest in America Act, should be passed immediately so that all vehicles come with this life-saving technology. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. I'd now like to introduce Tammy Huffman. Tammy's brother-in-law was a law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty by a distracted truck driver. We thank Tammy for her advocacy with the Truck Safety Coalition on behalf of proven crash avoidance technology to prevent future tragedies. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tammy Huffman. On May 6, 2013, as you said, my brother-in-law, my husband's identical twin brother, was killed by a distracted semi-truck driver. The truck was not equipped with AEB. Tim was a decorated war veteran. He did 3 tours in Iraq, and he served as a military police officer. He came back to the States and wanted to continue to serve his country with a servant's heart. He became an Arizona Department of Public Safety officer and planned to retire at the end of this year, actually. He was serving his country the day he was killed. He was my kid's second dad. We loved him and we miss him every single day. On the day of his preventable death, there were multiple emergency personnel on the roadway who were on scene of a previous accident involving an elderly person. Tim was in his patrol car riding up the accident scene when the truck's driver, an 18-wheeler, went through the accident scene and then thereafter caused a multi-car pileup. The county sheriff came to my door that night. My son was serving overseas in the Army, and he was in South Korea, so I thought for sure it was him. When he said, "It's about Tim," I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't say anything. I'm a mom of 5. I have lots of words. In that moment, I was silent. My lungs had just, all the air had left them. We later found out that semi-truck driver was on Facebook and looking at pictures of women as he was going down the roadway. His distracted driving and was reckless and irresponsible. But later we found out the truck did not have AEB, a collision avoidance technology that could have is proven to reduce track crashes and mitigate the severity of collisions. The crash and subsequent collisions created wreckage that was about a mile long. It could have been preventable if the truck had AEB. My heart breaks knowing that Tim's not with us today. And if AEB was on the truck, he could have been. It's unconscionable that this widely available technology is not standard on all trucks. To this day, watching my children struggle with their uncle's death has been one of the hardest things I could ever endure. It changed the trajectory of their lives. All of my children have chosen careers in honor of Tim. Tim can't speak for himself anymore, so we must be his voice. I try to remain positive and not let negative things take over me. And I want to say, until it happens to you, you can't understand the impact. I live and breathe it every single day. My husband at the time was a high school coach. And he was practicing with his pitchers. And at the moment of Tim's death, he was hit by a softball. He said, the pain of that softball hitting him was the worst thing he's ever felt in his life. And later that day, he said, that was Tim passing. I felt that. You know, the bond of a twin, you can never break while they're alive. Well, that's broken now. On his birthday, which we celebrated just on July 11th, my husband every single year has 2 pieces of cake now to honor Tim. At Christmas, we set an extra plate, and the kids are the first ones to remind me, don't forget Uncle Tim, Mom. As I said, we miss him every single day. And when they say the pain will ease, it doesn't. I speak for Tim, and I speak for road safety, and I pray that we can make these safety provisions available. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening to Tim's story.
Thank you so much for sharing it with us, Tammy. I'd now like to introduce Michelle and Jason Frazier. They advocate for a long overdue update of the seatback standard in vehicles after experiencing a horrific crash. Welcome, Michelle and Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning, I should say. My name is Michelle Frazier, and this is my husband, Jason.
Hi.
We are here today on behalf of my daughter, Jaden Faye, and of the thousands of families that have suffered catastrophic injuries or death as the result of a preventable seatback failure. We're here today to call on Congress to modernize the seatback safety standards that have for 54 years failed to protect families like mine. On Thanksgiving 2016, Thanksgiving Day, Jay Faye was nearly killed in a rear-end collision as our family drove home from feeding the homeless. As a result of the crash, this one-time champion athlete, national level dancer, and thespian suffered significant traumatic and life-altering injuries.
Yeah, so one moment we were laughing, smiling, joking, and enjoying what should have been the best day of the year, Thanksgiving Day. And only moments later, Jay Faye's head was split open, body convulsing, and my own head was so deeply concussed that I couldn't take care of my family. I had to go to a different hospital than my family went. To know that the vehicle's seatback performed exactly as it was designed to, and within the limits of the current law, is just hugely disturbing. I believe everybody in a vehicle deserves equal right to life, and I would think that most parents would think the same. Sadly, we're far from the only impacted family, and we've met several others along our journey. Far too many families will never see their children or their loved ones again because of the fact that they died in a seatback collapse. Some estimates suggest that 50 children each year die in these kinds of crashes. We were lucky.
It was only after our crash that we discovered these sorts of crashes are frequent and preventable. Working with organizations like the Center for Auto Safety, we've learned that efforts to modernize a standard that was written in 1967 have not been successful, even though the Department of Transportation itself says this is a hazard and can be fixed for less than $5 a seat. We are so glad that the House of Representatives included a mandate to the Department of Transportation to modernize the seatback safety standard in the INVEST Act. We are hopeful that the Senate will act quickly to finish what the House has started to help spare even one more family from suffering what my family and too many others like ours have had to suffer. We're grateful that today JFA is rehabilitating. However, this has thrown our family into a complete chaotic loop since it happened, and we hope that we can be some small part of fixing this for the future. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Michelle and Jason. I'd now like to introduce Eileen Kosk. Eileen is a firsthand witness to the dangers posed by box trucks and delivery trucks on our roadways, and the need for these vehicles to be equipped with automatic emergency braking. We will now show you pre-taped remarks from Eileen, who is a nurse on duty right now. And Eileen is also a volunteer with the Truck Safety Coalition. Please roll the video. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Eileen Kosk. Nearly 8 years ago, on August 12th, I was driving home with my two sons, Brian, age 7, and Brandon, age 12. We had a wonderful vacation at Ocean City, Maryland, where Brian finally learned to ride the waves for the first time. August 12th is a day I will never forget for 2 reasons. Brian was not scared of the waves anymore and had so much fun playing with his older brother. And that was the day my beautiful child died. We were almost home when in Smyrna, Delaware, we experienced a traffic backup and cars were at a complete stop. My car, while almost fully stopped, was hit by an inattentive box truck driver traveling approximately 65 miles an hour at 10 p.m. that night. Part of the truck came through the back window, striking my son Brian in the head, and he experienced severe head trauma. The truck continued on and hit 4 other vehicles before coming to a final stop. We were all taken to the hospital with injuries, but Brian did not survive. If this box truck had been equipped with automatic emergency braking, maybe I would still have my Brian today. Right now, the US Senate is taking up an infrastructure funding bill that directs our government to require AEB, but only on the largest types of trucks. It excludes this life-saving technology for class 3 to 6 trucks, like the one that killed my 7-year-old boy. These trucks also are large and dangerous and responsible for more than 1/4 of all truck crash deaths occurring throughout the nation every year. Unfortunately, politicians are listening to special trucking interests who want this carve out. I'm speaking out today because I want them to listen to me, a grieving mother whose young son was needlessly killed. They must act now to save the lives of children and parents by requiring AEB protection in all trucks. That is an unnecessary sacrifice that I find impossible to accept. In addition to the senators who are making this decision, I call on President Biden to support this crucial upgrade. We both are Delawareans, and we both know the pain and suffering of losing precious family members in a preventable truck crash. Also, like myself, the president must feel the frustration of inaction when cost-effective solutions are available to prevent catastrophic truck crash deaths and injuries. Now is the time to mandate AEB for all trucks. No exceptions and no excuses. Please do this for Brian and for other families like ours. It should not be a difficult decision.
Thank you, Eileen. Our next speaker is Commander Chris Olson of the Oro Valley Police Department in Arizona and a board member of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everyone. As Kathy said, I'm Commander Chris Olson, Field Services Commander for the Oro Valley Police Department in Arizona. I'm also a member of the International Associations of Chiefs of Police Highway Safety Committee. For many law enforcement officers and first responders, the roadways are our offices. Managing dangerous drivers is a common work hazard. I've lost many dedicated colleagues and have attended far too many funerals for officers killed on our roads. Most recently, Officer Jeremy Britton of the Nogales Police Department and Officer Gennaro New of the Phoenix Police Department died in the line of duty. Officer Britton was assisting with lane closures when he was struck by a distracted driver on May 20th. Officer New had only served 2 years when he was killed by a speeding red light runner on July 1st. Arriving at a catastrophic crash scene is always heartbreaking. I will never forget one fatal crash in the Oro Valley. Paul Garcia and Caitlin Festerling were waiting to make a left turn when their vehicle was hit from behind at 40 miles per hour, pushing them into oncoming traffic. They were just 22 and 21 years of age. The driver of the other vehicle was on her phone. I had the awful responsibility of informing Paul and Caitlin's mothers about the death of their children. Much like my fellow speakers, they heroically have channeled their pain and grief into advocates for change, and I applaud you all. A common factor in all these crashes is that they likely could have been prevented or mitigated by life-saving crash technology. I commend Chair Jan Schakowsky for sponsoring the 21st Century Smart Cars Act, and Chairman Peter DeFazio for shepherding the Invest in America Act, the major transportation bill, to passage to the House on July 1st. I also commend Senators Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth and Congresswoman Sherry Bustos for sponsoring the Protecting Roadside First Responders Act to mandate automatic emergency braking and other technologies in cars and trucks. It is critically important that the U.S. Senate bill be improved to match the safety language in the House's Invest in America Act. Doing so will ensure the best version of the technologies equipped in new vehicles and will help overcome some of the major causes of crashes, such as speeding, distracted, drugged, drunk, and drowsy driving. Let's get this over the finish line and put proven technology to use to end these horrific crashes, debilitating injuries, and heartbreaking deaths. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Commander Olson. I'd now like to introduce Ken McCloud, Policy Director with the League of American Bicyclists. We are proud to partner with the League in our common goal of protecting bicyclists and vulnerable road users. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to all the families who have shared their stories today. It's been incredible to hear all of the pain and suffering, and hopefully the Congress will act to address the safety of our vehicles so that those fatalities never happen again. Since the last new test was added to the U.S. New Car Assessment Program in 2011, pedestrian fatalities have increased nearly 40% and bicyclist fatalities have increased nearly 25%. While other countries have moved forward to address bicyclist and pedestrian safety, the U.S. has done nothing. Europe, Australia, China, Japan, and Korea all test for the safety of people biking and walking, and the U.S. does not. Our decades-long failure to ensure safety for people outside of vehicles must stop. I want to call attention to crash avoidance systems, including automatic emergency braking, which has been tested for bicycle and pedestrian safety in other countries since 2018. Current advertisements hold out the promise of vehicles detecting and stopping for people walking, but testing from AAA shows major deficiencies, such as US systems being completely ineffective at night when 75% of pedestrian deaths occur. The House bill would require that those systems are tested for bicyclist and pedestrian safety, while the Senate bill would not. By failing to address this important traffic safety solution, the Senate bill leaves Americans less safe and less informed. The League of American Bicyclists wants the safest vehicles possible for the people in them and people outside of them. Both the House and Senate have recognized the need for safer hoods and bumpers, modernized headlamps, and conducting an overdue update for the new car assessment program. There are multiple safe, cost-effective, and ready to implement vehicle safety technologies where the only thing missing is congressional leadership. So now is the time to take the best ideas from both chambers to create the safest vehicles for the American people. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Our last speaker today is Dr. Deanna Wathington. Dr. Wathington is a public health practitioner, family physician, and a board member of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Welcome, Dr. Wathington.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'd like to just thank the families who are with us today, the other safety professionals, and both Chairman DeFazio and Chairwoman Schakowsky for their advocacy. Every day, doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals witness the devastation of motor vehicle crashes. We see people's legs crushed, arms mangled, and internal organs damaged, sometimes beyond repair. While we tend to these injuries, we simultaneously know that many of them could have been prevented. By taking action now, Congress can save tens of thousands of lives. For example, automatic emergency braking, or AEB, as you've heard referred to multiple times today, is today's safety game changer to address all types of dangers on our roads. The AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety found that equipping all cars, pickup trucks, vans, minivans, and SUVs with AEB could prevent 1.9 million crashes, nearly 900,000 injuries, and more than 4,700 deaths annually. Passive impaired driving prevention technology could save more than 9,400 lives per year once in widespread use, according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And distracted driving crashes contributed to more than 3,100 fatalities in 2019. These crashes, which are known to be underreported, could be mitigated by driver monitoring technology. In addition to curbing other leading crash causes, such as impaired and drowsy driving, these systems will reduce automation complacency, an emergent issue as automated driving technology becomes more common and assumes more of the driving task. Since 1990, more than 1,000 children have perished in hot car deaths, an average of 39 per year. The latest victim was a 2-year-old girl last Friday here in my home state of Florida in Miami. Tragically, these deaths continue to occur, although detection and alert technology to prevent them is available and affordable. Pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities remain at a 30-year high, with more than 6,200 pedestrians and nearly 850 bicyclists killed on our roads in 2020. The majority of these fatalities happen when it is dark and outside of crosswalks. Upgrading the headlamp standard to improve performance and visibility and decrease glare, and setting a standard for adaptive headlamps are vitally needed. If all new vehicles were equipped with these improvements, as is required in the Invest in America Act, more than 70,000 lives could be saved over the 5-year span of this legislation. And this is a very conservative estimate. I urge the Senate to do the right thing at this pivotal juncture and include the safety provisions passed by the House. As medical providers, we would never withhold a proven cure from a sick patient. It is unacceptable, in our opinion, for the Senate to provide placebos instead of proven remedies to save lives and spare injuries to America's families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wathington. Really appreciate your comments. Thanks again to all of our speakers for joining us today. I'd like to now ask Tara Gill on Advocate staff to read any questions from the media, if there are any at this time.
Kathy, there are a couple questions, but they're directed to Chairman DeFazio, who I believe had to leave the event early.
Yes, that's my understanding. Well, I'd like to, again, thank all of our speakers, thank all of you who have tuned in today. It's obviously essential that we must take action to advance these proven safety technologies now to prevent the heartbreak and heartache of families in the future. Please, if you are interested in any individual interviews, please contact our communications director, Pete Daniels. You can leave him a message in the chat box now, or his email address is pdaniels@saferoads.org. Thank you again for joining us, and we will be fighting to advance safety in this legislation before it reaches the president. Thank you so much.